In the golden hush of a forgotten afternoon, a lone woman rides through quiet streets with a loyal German shepherd at her side, two souls scarred by loss, bound by unbreakable trust. Then, from the sidewalk, a small voice breaks the silence. "Will you buy my bike so my daddy can eat?" What happens next will remind you that sometimes the roughest hearts carry the gentlest mercy. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from.
Look up there.
And if you enjoy this story,
beautiful.
don't forget to subscribe.
Can you see it?
The afternoon sun hung low over the quiet suburban street, casting long golden shadows across the cracked pavement. A soft breeze carried the faint scent of cut grass and distant rain. It was the kind of day that felt peaceful to most folks, but to Brooke Hayes, it carried the weight of too many empty hours. Brooke Hayes was 35, a woman who had once believed life could be kind. She rode at the head of her small pack, three sisters in leather, Jade, Riley, and Harper, on a black Harley that rumbled like an old heartbeat. She stood 5'9", athletic and steady, her long dark brown hair pulled into a low ponytail that swayed with the wind. Her fair skin bore the faint lines of grief around her eyes that had seen too much. She wore the black Hell's Angels vest with its proud death head patch across the back, the leather worn soft from years of road miles, over a plain black t-shirt, fitted black jeans, and tall black leather boots. Dark sunglasses hid the deeper shadows beneath her gaze. They called her Storm, and the name fit. She had lost her husband and young son in a car accident 4 years earlier. A rainy night, headlights too bright, then silence. The world kept turning, but Brooke stopped. She joined the club to find something solid to hold on to, some roar louder than the ache inside. And then there was Rex. Rex was a German shepherd, 5 or 6 years old, black and tan coat, thick and glossy, muscular frame, carrying about 85 pounds of quiet strength. 26 inches at the shoulder, ears always up, brown eyes sharp and watchful. He wore only a thick black leather collar with a small silver tag that read Rex. Brooke had found him in a shelter the winter after the accident, abandoned by an owner who said he was no use anymore. She saw herself in those eyes, the way they searched for something lost. She took him home that day. At night, when the house felt too big and too quiet, Rex would climb onto the bed, rest his heavy head on her chest, and lick the tears from her cheeks. He never asked questions. He simply stayed. In the long hours when she sat on the porch staring at nothing, Rex lay at her feet, his steady breathing the only sound that reminded her she was still breathing too. They rode together often. Rex rode in a custom sidecar, or sometimes just behind her on the seat, harnessed safe, ears flattened against the wind. Today, the group cruised slow through the neighborhood, engines low and throaty. The street was empty except for the hum of distant lawnmowers. Then Rex lifted his head, ears pricked forward. A low growl built in his throat, then a sharp bark, urgent, not angry. Brooke eased the throttle, brought the bike to the curb. The others followed. She killed the engine, the sudden silence almost loud. Rex jumped down, paws soft on the warm asphalt, and stood alert, staring toward a distant tree where a small figure sat. Brooke pulled off her sunglasses, looked at him. "What is it, boy?" she murmured. Rex turned his head, met her eyes, then looked back toward the tree. In that moment, she felt it too, a pull, faint but real, like a thread tugging at something she had buried deep. She reached down, ran her hand along his strong neck, felt the warmth of his fur. "You always know, don't you?" she whispered. Rex leaned into her touch, tail giving one slow wag. For the first time in a long while, the loneliness inside her loosened just a little. Not gone, but not quite so heavy. The street lay still under the late afternoon light, the kind of hush that settles after children have gone inside for supper. A few leaves skittered across the pavement, carried by a gentle wind that smelled faintly of pine and distant wood smoke. The engines had gone quiet now, leaving only the soft creak of cooling metal and the distant call of a bird. Brooke stood beside her bike, one hand resting on the warm leather seat, the other on Rex's broad head. He remained alert, ears forward, eyes fixed on the small girl who had appeared from the sidewalk like a quiet question. The child was about 6, small and slender, no more than 3'8", with light skin dotted by a few freckles across her nose. Her long, light brown hair was tied in messy pigtails, strands escaping in the breeze. She wore a faded pink cotton dress that hung just past her knees, a white t-shirt underneath, and pink sneakers worn thin from too many summers. In her hands she held a cardboard sign, the letters "For Sale" scrawled in crayon. Behind her stood a pink bicycle with a white basket leaning against a tree. Her name was Ava, though Brooke didn't know that yet. The girl's voice, when she spoke, was small and trembling, like a leaf about to fall. "Sir, or ma'am, will you buy my bike?" she asked, eyes wide, searching the faces of the bikers. She looked up at Brooke, then down at Rex, as if deciding whom to trust first. Rex moved first. He stepped forward slowly, paws soft on the pavement, tail low but wagging once. He sat down beside the girl, close enough that she could reach him if she wanted. Ava hesitated, then dropped to her knees and wrapped her thin arms around his neck. Rex leaned into her, steady and warm, his tail giving a slow sweep across the ground. The girl pressed her face against his fur, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer, almost a whisper. "Bohem bon lam," she said, the words slipping out in English that carried a child's accent. "Like your dog, when he got left behind." Rex turned his head, licked her cheek once, gentle, careful. Ava smiled then, a small, real smile that broke through the fear. Brooke felt something shift inside her chest, like a door creaking open after years of being shut. She knelt slowly, bringing her eyes level with the child's. The girl's gaze was clear and honest, the kind that sees straight through to the heart. In those eyes, Brooke saw her own son, the way he used to look at her when the world felt too big. The memory rose unbidden, warm and sharp, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. Rex glanced at her, brown eyes steady, as if to say, "I'm here." Brooke reached out, touched the girl's shoulder lightly. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asked, voice low and rough from disuse. "Ava," the child answered. "My dad's name is Ethan. He hasn't eaten in 2 days." The words landed like stones in still water. Brooke's throat tightened. She looked at Rex, then back at Ava. The dog had become a bridge between them, quiet, unspoken, but real. In that instant, the loneliness that had lived in her for so long felt a little less heavy, shared now with this small girl and her faithful companion. The other bikers watched in silence. Jade, leaning against her bike, Riley crossing her arms, Harper standing still as stone. They knew Brooke's story, or parts of it. They had seen her ride through storms no one else could see. But this was different. This was a child, a bicycle, a sign. This was the kind of moment that reminded them why they rode together, not just for the road, but for the people left behind on it. Brooke stayed kneeling, her hand still on Ava's shoulder. The sun dipped lower, painting the street in soft gold. Rex lay down beside the girl, head resting on his paws, watching her with calm certainty. Ava leaned against him, fingers buried in his thick fur. For a long minute, no one spoke. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then Brooke looked up at the tree in the distance, where a man sat slumped against the trunk, wrapped in a thin blanket. She felt the pull again, stronger now, like a hand reaching through the years. She rose slowly, brushing dust from her jeans. "We'll figure this out, Ava," she said quietly. "I promise." The girl nodded, eyes shining with something that looked like hope. Rex stood too, pressed his side against Brooke's leg. In the fading light, the loneliness inside her didn't disappear, but it made room for something new, the quiet certainty that she was not alone in carrying it. The sun had slipped behind a thin veil of clouds, turning the light soft and gray. A quiet settled over the street, like a blanket drawn up against the evening chill. The tree where the man sat offered shade that felt more like shelter now, its leaves whispering in the breeze. Ava stayed close to Rex, small fingers still tangled in his thick black and tan fur. She looked up at Brooke, eyes shining with unshed tears. "My dad's name is Ethan," she said again, voice barely above a breath. "He hasn't eaten anything in 2 days. He's too weak." The words came slowly, each one heavy with the weight a child should never carry. Brooke listened, kneeling again, her knees pressing into the warm pavement. She felt the old ache rise in her chest, the same one that had lived there since the night the hospital lights went out. Rex shifted closer to Ava, his steady breathing a soft rhythm against the girl's side. Then Ava continued, her small voice cracking only once. "He used to work at the big catering place. Mr. Harrington, he's the boss, said they had to let people go. Dad begged him, just a few more weeks, for me. But Mr. Harrington said Dad was replaceable." The word hung in the air, sharp and cold. Ava's lip trembled. He said it like Dad didn't matter. A tear slipped down her cheek. Rex lifted his head, licked it away gently, then rested his chin on her knee. The girl leaned into him, shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. Brooke felt the anger rise, slow and deep, like a tide coming in after a long calm. She looked toward the tree. Ethan was a man of about 40, lean now from days without food, 5'11", with short, messy brown hair streaked by early gray at the temples. Several days of stubble shadowed his face, and his pale skin looked drawn, almost translucent. He wore an old plaid shirt, sleeves rolled up, loose faded jeans, worn gray sneakers, and a thin gray hoodie pulled tight around him. His eyes, when he lifted them, were tired, guarded, carrying the quiet conflict of a man who had once believed hard work would keep his family safe. Now he sat slumped against the rough bark, a thin blanket draped over his shoulders, staring at nothing. Brooke rose slowly, walked the short distance, the others following at a respectful distance. Ethan looked up as she approached. His gaze flickered with surprise, then shame. "I'm sorry," he murmured, voice rough and low. "She shouldn't have. I didn't want her to do this." Brooke shook her head. "She's trying to take care of you," she said simply. "That's what kids do when they love someone." Ethan's eyes filled. He looked away, jaw tight. Rex had followed, moving past Brooke to lie down beside the man. The dog pressed his warm side against Ethan's leg, then lifted his head and licked the back of Ethan's hand, slow, deliberate, comforting. Ethan froze. Then, almost without thinking, he rested his palm on Rex's head. A memory surfaced, soft and old. A boy and a dog running through summer fields, the same trusting warmth. "I had a dog once," Ethan whispered, "when I was a kid. He was the only one who stayed after my mom left." His voice broke. "My wife. She passed 2 years ago. Cancer. It's just been me and Ava since." The confession came quietly, like something long held and finally released. Rex stayed still, letting the man's hand rest there, his brown eyes calm and knowing. In that touch, something unspoken passed between them. Two souls who had both known what it was to be left behind. Brooke felt the anger give way to something deeper, something closer to sorrow. She reached into her vest, pulled out a roll of bills, and placed them gently in Ava's small hands. "Keep the bike, sweetheart," she said. "This is for food, for both of you." Ava's eyes widened, then filled again. Brooke knelt once more, looked at Ethan. "We'll be back," she promised. "Soon." She turned to Rex. "Stay with them a little while, boy." Rex settled between father and daughter, head on paws, watching them both with quiet vigilance. The group mounted their bikes again, engines rumbling low. As they pulled away, Brooke glanced back. Ethan's hand remained on Rex's neck, Ava curled against the dog's side. The sight stayed with her, soft and clear, like a photograph etched into memory. The loneliness that had shadowed her for so long felt different now. Not gone, but shared. And in its place came a quiet resolve. Some things were worth riding toward, worth fighting for, worth believing in again. The city rose around them like a glass monument to ambition, its towers catching the last slanting light of the day. Traffic hummed below, distant and indifferent. The air inside the lobby carried the cool scent of marble and polished steel, the kind of quiet that money buys. Brooke led the way, boots echoing softly on the polished floor. Rex walked at her heel, black and tan coat gleaming under the recessed lights, ears up, every step measured and alert. The receptionist glanced up, eyes beginning at the sight of the leather vests and the large German shepherd, but she said nothing as they passed. They took the elevator to the top floor in silence. When the doors opened, Victor Harrington's office lay ahead, floor-to-ceiling glass, a wide desk of dark walnut, city view stretching out like a conquered kingdom. Harrington himself stood behind the desk, 53, tall at 6'1", silver-gray hair neatly combed, clean-shaven, lightly tanned skin glowing under the soft office illumination. He wore a tailored black suit, crisp white shirt, deep red silk tie, and polished black Oxfords. A gold Rolex caught the light on his left wrist. His voice, when he spoke, was smooth and practiced. "Can I help you?" he asked, one eyebrow raised, the tone carrying the faint amusement of a man who rarely met anyone he couldn't dismiss. Brooke stepped forward, placed Ava's cardboard sign, "For Sale," gently on the center of his pristine desk. The crayon letters looked small and defiant against the dark wood. She began to speak, voice low but steady. She told him about the little girl on the sidewalk, the pink bicycle she tried to sell, the father who hadn't eaten in days because his job had been taken away. She described Ethan's plea for a few more weeks, the cold reply, "Replaceable." Harrington leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Business decisions," he said lightly. "We all have to make them." Brooke's hands tightened at her sides. She felt the old grief rise again, the memory of her own son's empty room, the way the world had kept moving while hers stopped. Her voice trembled now, just a little. It's not business when a child watches her father fade, when she thinks selling her only toy is the only way to keep him alive. Rex, who had been standing quietly, shifted. A low growl built in his throat, deep and rumbling. His hackles rose, black fur standing along his spine, ears pinned forward. He took one deliberate step closer to the desk, eyes locked on Harrington, not attacking, only warning. The room seemed to shrink. Harrington's smile faltered. He straightened, hands gripping the arms of his chair. Brooke looked straight at him, eyes wet but unflinching. "This dog," she said, resting a hand on Rex's head, "pulled me out of hell when I thought there was no way back. Now we're here for people like Ethan. People you decided didn't matter." The words hung between them. Rex's growl softened, but he remained close, a living shield of loyalty. Harrington's face changed, first surprise, then something deeper, like a crack appearing in stone, long thought unbreakable. He looked at the sign again, really looked. His shoulders sagged, just a fraction. I didn't know," he murmured. Brooke didn't press. She simply waited. The silence stretched, filled only with the faint hum of the city far below and the slow, steady breathing of the dog at her side. In that quiet, something shifted inside the man behind the desk, not a dramatic fall, but a slow, reluctant opening. He nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "I'll make it right," he said, voice quieter than before. It wasn't a grand promise. It was enough. The ride back was slower, the engines a low murmur against the gathering dusk. Brooke pulled over on a quiet stretch of road where the city lights faded into open fields. She killed the motor, swung her leg over the seat, and knelt beside Rex. Tears came then, hot and sudden. She wrapped her arms around his thick neck, buried her face in his fur. "You saw it, didn't you?" she whispered. "We did it, just like you saved me." Rex turned his head, licked her cheek once, then again, slow, steady, the same gentle ritual he had performed on countless dark nights. She felt his warmth, the rise and fall of his ribs, the quiet certainty of his presence. The loneliness that had shadowed her for years didn't vanish in that moment, but it grew smaller, pushed aside by something warmer, something shared. She rose slowly, wiped her eyes, and looked toward the horizon where the last light lingered. For the first time in a long while, the road ahead didn't feel so empty. The evening settled over the quiet street like a soft sigh, the sky bruised with purple and gold as the sun slipped below the horizon. A faint coolness touched the air, carrying the scent of cooling earth and distant supper fires. Under the old tree, the shadows lengthened, gentle now, no longer hiding pain. Brooke and the others returned as the light faded. The bikes rolled to a stop, engines hushed to a murmur before going silent. She swung down first, Rex leaping lightly beside her, tail sweeping low in quiet greeting. Ethan was standing now, still lean, still tired, but steadier. Color had returned to his face, faint but real. He wore the same old plaid shirt and jeans, but the thin gray hoodie hung open, no longer pulled tight against the cold inside him. Ava ran forward, small arms wide, and threw herself against Rex's side. The dog lowered his head, let her hug him, then licked her cheek with the same steady tenderness he had shown Brooke on so many dark nights. Ethan looked at Brooke, eyes clear and grateful. "I don't know how," he said softly, voice rough from disuse but warm now. But things changed. Food came, boxes of it, enough for weeks, bills paid, and the company, they called. They want me back. He paused, swallowed. I don't know who did it, but I know it wasn't chance. Brooke nodded once. She had seen the news quietly spread through town, anonymous donations to struggling families, hospital debts lifted for single parents, jobs quietly restored. Victor Harrington's name never appeared, but the hand behind it was clear to those who had stood in his office that afternoon. Earlier that day, in the glass tower, Harrington had sat alone after they left. The cardboard sign still lay on his desk, its crayon letters a quiet accusation. He had stared at it for a long time, fingers tracing the edges. Then, almost without thinking, he picked up the phone. Donations first, quiet, generous, to the families he had once dismissed. Rehiring notices followed, Ethan's name at the top of the list. When Brooke had spoken of Rex, something old had stirred in him. He had looked at the dog, strong, loyal, eyes that missed nothing, and remembered a boy who once had a dog he left behind when business called louder than love. The memory had come sharp and sudden, like a door long locked finally opening. He had whispered to the empty room, "I let so much go." In that moment, the man who had built an empire on replaceable people felt the weight of what he had lost, not money, but something softer, something human. The promise he made was not grand. It was simple, to do better, starting now. Back under the tree, they gathered in a loose circle. Someone had brought bread and cheese, a few apples, a thermos of coffee. They sat on the grass, passing food hand to hand. Rex moved among them, tail wagging slow and content, nudging Ava gently until she laughed. A bright, clear sound that cut through the evening like sunlight. He chased a leaf she tossed, bounding in wide circles, then returned to flop down in the middle of them all, head on paws, brown eyes half closed in peace. Brooke watched him, felt the warmth of the moment settle deep in her chest. She spoke quietly. Words meant more for herself than anyone else. Rex taught me something I'd forgotten. Kindness isn't about strength or power. It's about not walking away when someone needs you. Ethan looked at her, then at his daughter, then at the dog lying between them. Ava reached out, rested her small hand on Rex's flank. The group grew quiet. Stories drifted out, small ones, old ones, of losses and second chances, of nights that once felt endless. No one hurried. The light faded completely, stars appearing one by one overhead. Rex sighed, a deep, satisfied sound, and shifted closer to Brooke. In that shared silence, the wounds they had all carried seemed smaller, not erased, but softened by the simple act of staying. The night deepened, gentle and full. Under the tree, a new kind of family had taken root, not by blood, but by choice, by mercy, by the quiet loyalty of a dog who never judged. Brooke looked at them all, Ethan's tired smile, Ava's bright eyes, Rex's steady gaze, and felt something inside her finally come to rest. The road ahead would still have shadows, but she no longer had to walk it alone. As the sun sets on this simple story, remember, life's later chapters can feel long and quiet. The empty chair at the table, the silent phone, the ache in joints that once carried you everywhere. These are real, and they hurt. Loneliness creeps in like evening shadows, and illness whispers doubts about tomorrow. But kindness still finds a way. A neighbor's call, a stranger's smile, a loyal dog's steady gaze. They remind us we're never truly alone. You matter. Your story matters. Hold on. Reach out. Let someone in. If this touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope. Drop a comment below. What small act of kindness lifted you lately? Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so these gentle reminders find you again. May the Lord wrap you in peace, ease your pain, and surround you with love that never leaves. You are seen. You are loved. God bless you always.